A few days ago, the grand jury of New York indicted the former president of America, Donald Trump, and he was accused of 36 felonies, which could end up to about 136 years imprisonment if found guilty. It's an interesting one going on in America right now, and it's a very interesting one. I don't know if we should say that it's part of history in a good or in a bad way. But anyways, the video we're going to be checking out today is by Ben Shapiro, and this one is titled, "They Did It." I'm happy to see what he has to say because it's going to be intense. I think he might. Usually he's a little more composed, but I feel like he might get hot on this one. Let's get to it.
They finally did it. They did it. They finally indicted Donald Trump. It's the thing that they have been seeking for years on end, basically since 2015, when Donald Trump decided that he was going to run for the presidency. Certainly since he actually won the presidency in 2016, the left has been foaming at the mouth, seeking the day when Donald Trump would be frog-marched into a police precinct somewhere and then thrown in jail. And many prosecutors all over the nation have been aiming at this for a long time, but it was only Alvin Bragg, the brave and true, the guy who won't prosecute like any crime in New York, but he definitely will prosecute a supposed misdemeanor that happened back in 2015. That guy.
I think they said February 2017. I read the whole, the charges. Basically from number 1 to 8, they all look similar to me. Maybe I don't understand the law, but from number 1 to 8, they all look similar. You guys should go read it. I probably will add it somewhere maybe in the comment section or somewhere. But it's an interesting one.
Well, he is going for it. The grand jury yesterday finally decided they would go forward with the indictment of Donald Trump. Alvin Bragg tweeted out, quote, "This evening, we contacted Mr. Trump's attorney to coordinate his surrender to the Manhattan DA's office for arraignment on a Supreme Court indictment, which remains under seal. Guidance will be provided when the arraignment date is selected." According to the New York Times, Trump's indictment comes on as many as 34 charges of falsifications of business record. Now, here's the thing. These charges, the falsification of business record charge, that's a misdemeanor. In order to elevate that to a felony, so as to escape the statute of limitations, and so as to effectuate probably an arrest, in order for any of that to happen, they have to tie that to a campaign finance violation. Campaign finance.
And it's crazy that, so I'm going to take it back, but it's crazy that all of this is coming right now when it's close to the 2024 elections. Why now though? He's committed all these felonies they're accusing him of. He's committed it since 2017, I believe, because the thing clearly states, I think February 17th or 27th, 2017, on or before, or I think they said on or about that time. And they're charging him for all those things now. Kind of suspicious, right? A little bit fishy. It's just a little bit, tiny bit fishy.
This record charge, that's a misdemeanor. In order to elevate that to a felony, so as to escape the statute of limitations, and so as to effectuate probably an arrest, in order for any of that to happen, they have to tie that to a campaign finance violation. The campaign finance violation, as we've talked about before, is specifically the question as to whether Stormy Daniels was paid off by Donald Trump using his own personal funds rather than using campaign funds when it actually was a quote-unquote campaign expenditure. So the question is going to come down to whether Trump paid off Stormy Daniels because he would have paid her off at any time because he's for sure signed hush money payments before, or whether he was doing it as an election expense and then failing to properly bill that to his campaign, instead paying it via Michael Cohen. Now, Michael Cohen did go to jail on the basis of pleading guilty to something like that. But then Cyrus Vance, who was the DA in New York at the time, refused to elevate those charges against Trump. The feds refused to elevate campaign finance charges against Trump. Only Alvin Bragg, 7 years later, is now doing this, which is kind of absurd. The New York Times says Donald Trump was indicted in Manhattan on Thursday for his role in paying hush money to a porn star, according to 5 people with knowledge of the matter, a historic development that will shake up the 2024 presidential race and forever mark him as the nation's first former president to face criminal charges. Listen, the Democrats have now broken the glass. And they broke glass in case of emergency. And now that glass is broken, it's going to be very hard to put it back together because here's the deal. Democrats.
I said the same thing in my last video. They've created a pattern, and now that is going to be the new norm. Everybody's going to have to keep their everything they do when they're on seat in check. Everybody. Because after now, the Republicans are going to do it back to the Democrats. The next person, if the person is Democrat, is going to do it back to the Republicans. It's going to be constant disruption, a constant fight, and we don't need that division, or America doesn't need that division.
Democrats do this all the time. They take a step that is absolutely unprecedented in American history, say, kill the filibuster for judicial nominees. And not very long afterward, that entire process boomerangs around on them, and Republicans are ramming through Supreme Court nominees with 51 votes. Well, if you think this is the last time you are going to see a former president indicted, you got another thing coming. Now that Democrats have made clear that they are willing to go after a former president on the flimsiest of charges, and again, we'll get to how flimsy these charges are in just 1 second, you can just expect there will be politically motivated prosecutors on every side of the aisle going after everybody's favorite politicians. So we have now entered an era in which the opposition is basically under threat of legal indictment at all times. According to the New York Times on Thursday evening, after news of the charges had been widely reported, the DA's office confirmed that Trump had been indicted and that prosecutors had contacted Trump's attorney to coordinate his surrender. 3 people with knowledge of the matter said Trump was expected to turn himself in and face arraignment early next week, at which point the specific charges would be unsealed. Trump had for decades avoided criminal charges despite persistent scrutiny and repeated investigation, creating an aura of legal invincibility the indictment threatens to puncture. That's one way to put it in New York Times. The other way to put this is that this is a trumped-up charge, and that they are going after Trump mainly because Alvin Bragg wanted to make a headline and because Democrats had to have their day. Now, this whole situation just smacks of the Chekhov's gun idea. Right? There's this idea in theater, the playwright, Antonin Chekhov, that if you put a gun above the mantle in the first act, it must be used by the end of the second act. The looming threat of an indictment on Trump, that's been the gun above the mantle since 2015. It was going to be used somewhere in here. Trump himself put out a statement in response in which he called Bragg a disgrace. Trump's actual statement reads.
Yeah, I saw that. Trump wasn't holding back. You guys should go check it out. I don't know if I can bring that video, but it's too long. I don't know if I want to sit that long to watch it. But you guys should go check it out. Trump, give it back.
This is political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history. From the time I came down the golden escalator at Trump Tower, even before I was sworn in as your president of the United States, the radical left Democrats, the enemy of the hardworking men and women of this country, have been engaged in a witch hunt to destroy the Make America Great Again movement. You remember it just like I do. Russia, 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 the Mueller hoax, Ukraine, 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 impeachment hoax 1, impeachment hoax 2, the illegal and unconstitutional Mar-a-Lago raid, and now this. The Democrats have lied, cheated, and stolen in their obsession with trying to get Trump, but now they've done the unthinkable, indicting a completely innocent person in an act of blatant election interference. Never before in our nation's history has this been done. The Democrats have cheated countless times over the decades, including spying on my campaign, but weaponizing our justice system to punish a political opponent, who just so happens to be a president of the United States and by far the leading Republican candidate for president, has never happened before, ever, says Donald Trump in his statement. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, who was handpicked and funded by George Soros, is a disgrace. Rather than stop the unprecedented crime wave taking over New York City, he's doing Joe Biden's dirty work, ignoring the murders and burglaries and assaults.
Doing Joe Biden's dirty work.
Should be focused on. This is how Bragg spends his time. Again, this is all Donald Trump's statement. I believe this witch hunt will backfire massively on Joe Biden. The American people realize exactly what the radical left Democrats are doing here. Everyone can see it. So our movement and our party, united and strong, will first defeat Alvin Bragg, then we'll defeat Joe Biden. We're going to throw every last one of these crooked Democrats out of office so we can make America great again. So listen, it's a shot.
America is doing a lot. I believe like they should pick and choose the fights seasonally. You know, I feel like America at this time is not the time where you want to be indicting the former president. De-dollarization is a big deal now. Inflation is a big deal now. Countries not wanting to do deals with America and choosing to do it with the BRICS nation. That's also a big deal now. That's affecting, I feel like that is affecting America more than indicting a president. Maybe you want to indict Donald Trump for what he's done, or let's say he's guilty of all those things, and you choose at some point you choose to indict him. That shouldn't be today, you know. You might want to do that later. Take care of this one first, because America has a lot of problems going on right now. China is not playing with all this gold they are buying. It's not for sure.
Shot in the arm to Trump's campaign, just on a political level. We'll get to the politics of this after we get to the legality of all of this and what comes next in terms of procedure. The next question is, what happens next? So apparently, Donald Trump is going to turn himself in. This has some ramifications, not only for Donald Trump's campaign, but also for the other.
I feel like he turned himself in yesterday, so I believe this video might have been maybe like 4 or 5 days ago. But Donald Trump just recently turned himself in. I mean, I rumored that he's turned himself in. I saw a video.
Ron DeSantis in particular, we'll get to that in a moment. First, he will be fingerprinted, he'll be photographed, he might even be handcuffed. Now, all of this for Trump's campaign, again, is a shot in the arm, because the feeling that he has been viciously attacked for no reason other than they hate him is obviously going to boost him in the Republican primaries. Just politically speaking, that is absolutely what it's going to do. Trump, for political reasons, is going to want pictures of himself being victimized by Alvin Bragg's ridiculous prosecution here. And barring some sort of extraordinary change in the sealed charges from what we have seen before, it is a ridiculous legal case. Trump will almost...
He even said he wants to be imprisoned as a normal criminal. He wants to take the mug shots, he wants to be in curves and all those things. They're giving him free publicity.
Certainly be accompanied at every step of the process by armed agents of the U.S. Secret Service. They are required by law to protect him at all times. It's a weird, unprecedented situation. There'll probably be some accommodations made for him. Most defendants who are arrested on felony charges are handcuffed, but it's unclear whether there will be some sort of exception made for Trump, particularly because, again, he's going to turn himself in and negotiate. His lawyers have already said he's not going to resist any sort of extradition or anything like that. The legality of the case itself is incredibly weak. Even Trump's most vicious enemies, people like Eli Mistal over at The Nation, even he says that this case is particularly weak. He suggests the odds the path to real justice, let alone prison time, runs through the Manhattan DA's office still seem very, very long. He points out that Michael Cohen, who's their key witness, initially lied to federal investigators. This makes him a not particularly good witness. The fact that the Southern District of New York has already looked at these charges and decided not to do anything. That the federal government looked at these charges and decided not to do anything. The fact that this is going to be a state of mind crime, really. How do you prove that Donald Trump paid off Stormy Daniels to keep quiet because of the election, as opposed to he paid her to keep quiet because he just wanted her to keep quiet? State of mind crimes are very difficult to prove.
That's a very good point. Very, very good point. Yeah.
Intent crimes, particularly for Trump, are very, very difficult to prove. Again, Eli Mistal says so at The Nation. Very hard to think of somebody who hates Trump more than Eli Mistal, unless it's maybe David French. David French over at the New York Times says exactly the same thing. He says, most likely prosecutors will rely on an allegation of violating federal campaign finance law, specifically the claim that the hush money payments to Daniels were illegal campaign contributions. But this isn't a simple case to make. The prosecution might claim that state campaign finance laws apply to Trump and his payments violated New York law. But remember, we're talking about a presidential election. A federal statute expressly states relevant campaign finance laws supersede any state law. That is a formidable barrier to prosecuting Trump under state campaign finance laws. There's no obvious path around it. The claim that Trump violated federal...
So if this thing is weak, then how did the New York jury come to the conclusion to indict him? Because they probably should have seen it's a weak case too, right? I mean, I'll believe so. Just asking.
Federal law isn't necessarily frivolous, but his defense is really simple, which again is that the hush money payments had nothing to do with the election and everything to do instead with his desire to keep the story quiet. So is this prosecution actually going to succeed? Here's the thing. Because everyone knows that the prosecution is so weak, if it does, people are going to feel it's one of the great miscarriages of justice in modern American history. If Donald Trump ends up being convicted on charges this flimsy just because it's happening in New York where everybody hates his guts, can you imagine the political consequences for the country if that goes forward right now? Now, remember, this is only the first trial that Trump has on
the judiciary system anymore
on the docket. There may be others coming up. There's still something like 3 other open cases against Trump. There's a special counsel, Jack Smith, on the federal level who's currently investigating whether he interfered with the peaceful transfer of power on January 6th. He's also investigating Trump's handling of classified documents. Both of those cases are still open. Again, I think both of those probably amount to nothing. But there's a Fulton County DA named Fani Willis, again, a Democrat, who's attempting to prosecute Trump on the basis that he tried to overturn the 2020 election in Georgia. All right, guys, the rest of the show is continuing right now. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be getting into the mailbag, but...
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shapiro. That was a very good video for us. Let me know your thoughts on that video. Do you think the way they are treating Trump is fair? Personally, I don't believe you should treat any ex-president like that, especially if they are contesting again. I mean, it's relative, depending on the situation. His case doesn't... It doesn't strike me like, I mean, whatever they're accusing him of, it doesn't strike me like something that hits heavy. If they said Donald Trump gave the order to kill, like, people or something, you know, like something that can, like, hit you hard when you hear it, then it's going to be like, oh, shit, yeah, prosecute that man. But this one doesn't hit me like that. I just my thoughts, though, I might be wrong, but that's if he actually did it, because at this point, we are not sure yet. So I'm just saying if he actually did something like that. And on the other case, my question is, why now? 2017. And then now, in fact, Donald Trump has been on the hot seat since he started running for presidency. Like, since he just made that decision to run, it's like everything unfolded right before his eyes. Like, boom. You are a criminal, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing this. Everybody's speaking about it. So, like, is this newly identified? Didn't we know he was doing these things before? I'm not saying if you committed a crime, if years pass, you should not be convicted. You know, the law is there, you know. But this one just feels like a conspiracy. I'm not saying this. I'm not saying anything as a matter of fact. I'm just saying feels like it. Just my opinion. Let me know your thoughts on that video. Let me know. In fact, let me know your thoughts on the whole situation. Anything you think, just share it in the comment section. Let's have a discussion about this. It's the end of this video. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll catch you on the next one. Have a wonderful day. Peace.